One restart, one locked break, and a wreck that ended 2 championship-caliber days before the race was even half over. Connor Zilisch was leading laps in his Cup debut weekend, for the first time in his young Premier Series career. Shane van Gisbergen had the fastest car on the grid, a pole-sitter who'd waited all afternoon for the track to finally come alive underneath him. In 4 seconds, both of those stories were gone, and Austin Hill was the reason. Hill missed the apex. He clipped Zilisch into the wall. Van Gisbergen, with nowhere to go, plowed straight into the wreckage at full speed. 2 Trackhouse cars, destroyed. Zilisch's first laps led at this level, 6 DNFs into his rookie season, gone in 4 seconds. It happened for the second week in a row. If you want to understand why this one restart is bigger than a single bad lap, why it has Shane van Gisbergen calling Austin Hill out by name on his own channel days later, and what it means when these two share a track again next week, this is everything you need to know. If you're a NASCAR fan who wants the real story behind every wreck, not just the highlight reel everyone else is running, hit subscribe right now. Drop a comment telling us this. Is Austin Hill being unfairly blamed for hard racing on an impossible new circuit? Or is this a pattern the sport can't keep ignoring? Smash that like button so more diehard fans find this channel. Now let's get into it. Naval-based Coronado was never supposed to be easy. This was NASCAR's first ever National Series weekend on the streets of San Diego. A tight, narrow layout built around hangars, helipads, and concrete walls, with almost no margin for error. Drivers had spent the entire week warning that one mistake here would not look like a mistake anywhere else. Nobody fully believed how fast that warning would prove true, or how many times it would prove true in a single weekend. Connor Zilisch wasn't supposed to be leading laps yet. Not here, on a circuit this unforgiving, not against a cup field this loaded with experience. But on Sunday, the rookie was out front for the first time at NASCAR's highest level, and Trackhouse finally had a car underneath him that could back up the run. A few rows back, Shane van Gisbergen had qualified on pole. As the afternoon wore on and the track rubbered in, his Red Bull Chevrolet started coming alive in exactly the way every elite road racer dreams about. Both Trackhouse cars had legitimate shots to win this race outright. This was supposed to be their weekend, not anyone else's. The track itself was part of the story before a single car wrecked. Coronado's layout ran through active sections of the naval base, with concrete walls pulled in tight on both sides and almost no runoff anywhere on the circuit. Drivers had compared it all weekend to threading a needle at 140 miles an hour. NASCAR had already dealt with a loose manhole cover tearing through one car's nose earlier in the weekend, proof that this circuit was going to demand a level of precision nobody could fully prepare for in practice alone. Nobody could have known that a loose manhole cover and a damaged wall were just the warm-up for what lap 32 was about to deliver. Then there was Austin Hill. Just one day earlier, in the O'Reilly Series race on this same circuit, Hill had delivered Richard Childress Racing its first win since Kyle Busch's sudden death the month before, an emotional last-lap pass that meant far more to that garage than a trophy ever could. Now he was running up front in Cup as well, in a seat he holds because of a tragedy that nobody at RCR has finished grieving. That context matters, because it means every mistake Hill makes in that car carries weight that has nothing to do with horsepower or lap times. Lap 32. Restart. Hill took the inside line. Zilisch lined up on the outside, in prime position to defend the lead he'd worked all day to build. Van Gisbergen got such a strong launch off the restart that for a brief moment he ran 3 wide, alongside both of them, before making the call to back off and avoid the risk of a 3-car disaster on the opening corner. That single decision is the only reason he wasn't the first car to hit the wall. But here is the thing that most people still get wrong about what happened on lap 32. This wasn't Austin Hill's first time at the center of a wreck like this. 1 week earlier, at Pocono, Hill was involved in another multi-car incident that ended other competitors' days early. San Diego was not an isolated bad lap. San Diego was a pattern, continuing in real time, on national television, in NASCAR's top series. Going into turn 1, Hill ran wide of the apex. His rear brakes locked underneath him. The car kept sliding. There was nothing left to do but ride it out. Zilisch had nowhere to go and slammed the outside wall at speed. Van Gisbergen, charging hard right behind both of them with a full head of steam, had no room to react either. He plowed into the wreckage. 2 Red Bull Chevrolets completely gone. 9 cars total, caught in the chain reaction before NASCAR could even throw the caution flag. The red flag came out moments later. Crews spent precious minutes repairing a wall that had absorbed 3 separate impacts in the span of a few seconds. Hill didn't dodge any of it. "Sorry guys, locked up the rear brakes," he said over the radio in the raw, immediate aftermath, before he'd even climbed out of the car. Later, after being released from the infield care center, he made it just as plain to reporters waiting outside. "I got into turn 1 a little deep and started sliding," he explained. "That one's on me. No hedging, no blaming the track, no pointing at anyone else. Just a driver owning the mistake the moment it happened. On camera, in real time." Zilisch was more careful with his words, but he didn't let Hill off the hook either. "I felt like I was giving Austin space, and the next thing I know, I was in the wall," he said afterward. Asked directly whether it was simply a racing incident, he didn't agree. "It was a little more egregious than that," he said. "He was pretty far from the wall and didn't give me any space." Zilisch had raced clean all weekend. That was as pointed as he'd get. Van Gisbergen barely spoke to reporters trackside at all. "Ask the next guys," he said flatly when pressed on what caused it. Asked how disappointed he was watching a strong car go to waste, he gave a one-word answer: filthy. But whatever he held back standing in the infield that afternoon, he didn't hold back for long. Within an hour of the broadcast ending, social media had already rendered its verdict. The comment sections weren't asking whether it was a racing incident. They had already decided it wasn't. "Austin Hill is the best case for a NASCAR licensing system," one fan wrote. "He should never be in Cup." Another put it more bluntly: 2 weeks in a row, Austin Hill showing how garbage he is. Trash. A third called him, simply, a usual terrorist behind the wheel. None of it was gentle. None of it showed any sign of letting up as the week went on. Then came the moment that turned a bad weekend into a real, ongoing storyline. Days later, in a recap video posted to his own channel, Shane Van Gisbergen looked back on the entire San Diego weekend and named the problem directly, without hiding behind a careful quote to a reporter. He referred to Austin Hill as the same spud, responsible for wrecking him 2 weeks in a row, first at Pocono and now again at San Diego. That's not an anonymous comment buried in a thread. That's the driver who lost his car, putting his own name and his own channel behind the accusation. Give Hill this much credit, because it matters. Street courses humble everyone, including drivers who've spent entire careers proving exactly where they belong. The day before this wreck, in the O'Reilly Series race on this same circuit, 23 cars piled into the wall during a separate, unrelated incident. That one had nothing to do with Hill at all. Sam Mayer caused that wreck, clipping the inside wall on a restart and triggering a chain reaction that collected more than half the field. Mayer didn't run from it for a second. "I have to be one of the worst race car drivers to ever touch this sport," he said afterward, calling it embarrassing, calling it entirely his fault, with no qualifications attached. Coronado punishes mistakes. That much is true for everybody who raced there that weekend, not just Hill. Zilisch himself, even after calling Hill's error egregious, never once suggested it was anything other than a bad lap under pressure. No driver, no team, and no broadcast has produced a single shred of evidence suggesting Hill meant to put 2 cars into a concrete wall on purpose. That distinction matters, and it's worth saying clearly. Nobody with first-hand knowledge of this incident is calling it intentional. NASCAR itself didn't penalize Hill. No fine, no points deduction. If the sanctioning body saw something deliberate on that footage, that's the moment they'd have said so. This is not a conspiracy. This is not a driver trying to wreck 2 rivals on purpose. This is a pattern, 2 incidents, 2 weeks, 2 title contenders that a team can't keep explaining away as bad luck. Sam Mayer's mistake happened once, and he owned every inch of it without complaint. Austin Hill's has now happened twice, in the same number of weeks, against 2 of the most accomplished road course racers currently competing in this sport. 1 bad lap is a racing incident, the kind every driver walks away from with a handshake. 2 bad laps, 2 weeks running, against 2 different elite opponents, start to look like something the sport can't simply wave off as variance. Not a conspiracy, not a deliberate act, but a real, repeating pattern that a team filling a tragic, high-profile vacancy can't afford to keep absorbing without asking hard questions. The cost of all this is not just emotional, and it's not abstract either. Connor Zilisch's afternoon ended in his 6th DNF of a rookie season that was supposed to be building real momentum heading into the back half of the year, and it erased the very first laps he had ever led at NASCAR's top level. Shane Van Gisbergen, the pole sitter with what was unquestionably the fastest car on property by the final stage, dropped 3 spots in the playoff standings and now sits outside the cutoff line with a shrinking number of races left to climb back in. For a Trackhouse racing organization that arrived in San Diego with 2 legitimate fast cars and genuine win contention, the weekend ended with both of them in pieces in the garage and a real dent in their championship math to show for it. But the cost isn't one-sided. For Hill, the stakes cut just as sharply, if not more. He's no longer just a driver trying to make the most of a part-time Cup opportunity. He's the man sitting in a car that opened up because Childress Racing lost one of its own, and every lap he runs now gets measured against that. There's no quiet way to have a third incident in 3 weeks if Sonoma goes wrong. The benefit of the doubt that comes with stepping into a tragic situation only stretches so far, and Hill is now testing exactly how far that actually is. A clean weekend at Sonoma quiets the noise considerably. Another incident, and the conversation stops being about bad luck entirely. It becomes a conversation about the seat itself. And the rematch isn't far off. Hill and Van Gisbergen will share the same racetrack twice next weekend at Sonoma, once in the O'Reilly Series on Saturday, and again in Cup on Sunday. Neither side has had much time to cool off. Neither side has forgotten exactly what happened at San Diego, and both of them know they're about to be racing each other again, on track, within days. For 2 drivers who'd normally let a hard racing incident go by the next event, that's a lot of opportunity sitting right next to a lot of unresolved tension. So is Austin Hill simply living through the worst 2-week stretch of his career, racing 2 of the most demanding circuits NASCAR has thrown at the field all season? Or is this the moment Childress Racing has to ask a harder, more uncomfortable question about who's sitting in that car right now? Nobody outside that building knows the real answer yet. The drivers who lost their entire weekends to him aren't calling it intentional, but after 2 weeks like this, they're clearly not calling it nothing either. Every storyline that came out of San Diego, the pattern, Trackhouse's mounting frustration, Van Gisbergen calling Hill out by name in public, follows this story directly into Sonoma next week. Nothing here has been resolved. Everything about it is still escalating. If you made it to the end of this video, you already know this channel covers NASCAR the way it actually deserves to be covered. No fluff, no filler, just the real story behind the headline. If you're not subscribed yet, do it right now. Drop a comment and tell us straight, is Hill just unlucky on 2 brutal racetracks, or does he not belong in that seat? Next week, he and Van Gisbergen line up twice at Sonoma, and we'll be there for every single lap.